All right, how's it going, my magnificent sons of bitches? And I'm back here again to talk about, there's been a little bit of news here that there was an FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, and I've seen a lot regarding like kangaroo courts as far as it pertains to the mainstream media. One of them being Alex Jones. And of course, everybody's favorite show trial that is the January 6th hearing committee and all of the other fucking bullshit that the media has been running with. But it hasn't really um, changed the national sentiment. I mean, they've been running with this bullshit since 2016 of Russian hacking, or yada, 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 election tampering, all this ridiculous bullshit. The mainstream media has been monotonous with it. And it's just the same old monotonous shit, regardless if it's the weapons of war, if it's the AR, if it's another mass shooting, and then they fucking come out on Twitter and post their list of mass shootings and shit that's doesn't really take place, but they want you to believe that it takes place. They want you to, get behind them and their failing propaganda networks and to get some sort of superficial reaction. Unfortunately, however, uh, they're not getting the reactions that they desired. Whenever you take a look, every time they try to sit there and do this whole, oh, it's been 1 year since January 6th, or you remember Uvalde, or the I stand with Ukraine, and the whole abortion is healthcare and all this other stupid crap. The propaganda, the old tard ass cliches that they run with their wedge issues and whatnot, has been losing steam. Ultimately, probably about 10 years ago, um, Roe v. Wade being overturned and abortion, which isn't a right, but it is what it is. Abortion privileges, I should say, would be a hot button topic for the left, probably 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. That's fair to say that about 10 years ago it would have been a hot button topic back in 2012. But see, that's where it ends. Like I said, I don't believe that the Democrats have won an honest election, and everything is overly scrutinized now. Particularly, uh, anything that goes for the left is going to be heavily scrutinized from here on out. And this isn't only by the right. If it was just by the right, then that would be one thing. You know, we already understand that the left is always going to sit there and accuse the right, and the right's always going to accuse the left. I mean, if the Republicans were the worst of the Democrats' problems, then that would be one thing. They could just sit there and shrug it off and say, "Well, you're not going to win those people anyways." It's everybody in between that ends up being the problem. And if you go on YouTube, and particularly the more successful channels like say Midnight's Edge or The Quartering or Geeks and Gamers or various of these independent channels here on YouTube, most of them tend to lean right. I mean, you've got your, ones that develop their little marginalized echo chamber, and a lot of these people have the same fans and stuff, but it's pretty marginalized. The left's reach on any independent platform is actually very marginalized. This is what happens whenever they take over a platform like Twitter or now like YouTube and Facebook. The you see that the traffic goes way down. Like the traffic on Twitter is really really low. It's really low. It's almost laughably low. Whenever you're looking at the top 10 trends, and if you don't believe me, you can go look at the top trends right now, and you'll see that if you're lucky, you're getting about 10,000 trends if you're a top trend. So that means that the traffic is very very low. Used to that wouldn't be considered a trend. That viral. You could sit there and consider that viral. Something went viral, but it's certainly not a fucking trend. Used to be a trend, you'd have to get at least like say 300,000 or 400,000 people invested into it, and now they can't even get that on Twitter. So we look at DC. DC has been controlled by the Democrats ever since they've had an electoral vote back in 1961. It's been abundantly fucking clear that the white nationalist party, which is the Democrat Party, have ultimately controlled DC. And so, um, yeah, it's the national sentiment as it pertains to like the Democrats is starting to shift. It's actually probably, and the reason why is because a lot of the politicians are so corrupt. They're openly pushing shit anymore. They're openly being corrupt and they're exposing who they are, and it's not appealing. And considering how tyrannical they are, whenever they go ahead and institute the censorship bill, which is like the HR 5181, or the propaganda bill, where they get to say spread stupid shit and say that the sky is always falling, and their HR 5736, that the uh, majority of the population as a whole are starting to you know um, basically wake up to the mass manipulation of the mainstream media. And the mainstream media ultimately, whenever you look at the mainstream media, they just, in a market of in a market of free ideas and stuff, the mainstream media can't compete. It's marginalized. This is why we see right now that Warner Brothers is actually starting to go ahead and get rid of a lot of their woke messaging in the DC brand. And so that's probably going to be, as far as like entertainment goes, that's probably going to be the first domino to fall. I hope so, anyways. That they come in and cater to the fans of the DCEU, and they start to go ahead and become successful based off of entertainment as opposed to the virtue signaling or the messaging. Ultimately, there's nothing wrong with having strong female characters. I don't have a problem with it. There's nothing wrong with having diversity as long as it's not forced, and as long as you build it right, and as long as you um put more effort in developing the characters rather than being lazy, like DC tends to, or Marvel has tended to do in the past year or so, of saying we're just going to push this, and it's generic, it's cheap, it's lazy, and there's very, very low effort into it. So with the national sentiment, and I'm almost certain, I'm just here to tell you that most of the people out there that I come in contact with, like I said, they swung further right than I am, ultimately. And like Travis is one of these guys. Travis, you're from fucking Dallas. You know what I'm saying? You're surrounded by leftists. However, you really didn't, like I said, for the most part, probably about, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe even a little bit before Trump, probably, you would have probably been more, I lean more left being a Metroplex guy, because it's your environment, and I get it. You know what I'm saying? However, a lot of people that were left, just got out, talking to, listening to Jasmine No Thanks talk about how her lights are out in New Mexico, and she would have been a leftist. She would have been radically leftist. She would have been a Bernie supporter, not more than probably 6 years ago. She was a leftist, and now she's right of me. And a lot of these people are. They're, oh, how's it going, Scott? A lot of these people are actually probably right of me, and there's no talking them out of vote for Trump. And like I said, me myself, I'm not a particular fan, and I've already stated for the record, I'm probably not going to vote for Trump again. And if he's running against Joe Biden, probably not going to vote. However, with this being said, mental incompetent radical leftist clowns here in Dallas. Good thing I woke up seeing the truth. But looking at these primaries and seeing the outcome of these primaries, it's because like I looked at the Arizona primaries for the governorship, right? And the Democrats are like, oh, yada yada yada. They put their little percentages, they put their little spin on stuff. I looked up results in Arizona. I looked up results in Ohio, and the turnout for the GOP. Now, this isn't, saying that Not the MAGA, definitely just the MAGA, but looking at the turnout as the GOP as a whole, the turnout isn't even close. It's not even close. And it's funny because, of course, the polls are coming out and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, well, the Democrat nominee at Ohio has a 50, like 3% chance of winning, 58% chance. And fucking JD Vance only has a 42% chance. And it's based off of what? Marginalized polls based off of your own echo chambers. And so, it's when you look at the turnout though in Ohio, is it say the same thing? Absolutely fucking not. It says that JD Vance is probably going to win by about 60%, if not more, because the voter turnout for the Republicans were so high. Because it wasn't only JD Vance, there was a bunch of people running against JD Vance. And I can tell you right now that the Republicans are going to congeal, particularly after the effects of your useless freaking Inflation Reduction fucking act happens. All of this bullshit that you fucking put into this legislation. Oh, well, we're going to lower this. And, some of it may be good. But this is how the Democrats work. They never give you anything. If they give you something, you can understand that they're stealing more than they're going to give you. That's how the Democrats operate. And whenever the effects of these legislations are felt, and then the Republicans are going to congeal. And like I said, the Republicans already feel like they've been screwed out of 2020. Ultimately, I said that y'all should have done something about it in 2018, whenever Alyssa Milano and various other Democrats decided that they were going to go ahead and rig these elections earlier. Hell, if you want to get right down to the point, I believe I've mentioned that the 2016 election was rigged, but it wasn't rigged for Donald Trump, and I believe that we should have, sat there and stopped it whenever fucking they were trying to sit there and make the claim that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. No, she didn't win the popular vote. It wasn't even close. If she would have won the popular vote, there's no doubt you would have installed her. And I think that everybody has come to this fucking conclusion that the Democrats are corrupt enough, and being how they pretty much run the State Department, that ultimately this would have been, the deal. They would have installed Hillary Clinton if she won the popular vote. The fact that she lost so bad, and the fact that the Democrats have been losing so bad since about 2014, well, they just couldn't, really feasibly install Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton was the most unpopular candidate to ever run for the office of presidency. There was no way that Hillary Clinton could have beat fucking, I don't know if fucking Clinton could have beat Mussolini. To be honest with you, she's just not that likable of a person. So, yeah, she wasn't put into office. So I meant, and it fucking chapped a bunch of people's ass. It chapped their ass. So they put on these little charades, and they've been sitting here putting out these charades. And like I said, this would have been okay in the, say the 90s. Even in the early 2000s, they could have gotten away with this because we didn't have this access to the internet like we do today. All these leftists will come out and say, well, what about 9/11? What about 9/11? All that turned out, yeah, well, we didn't have the same kind of access to information back in 2001 as we do today. Now, the mainstream media just can't sit there and push this shit. They get blowback. They get feedback now. It's not the same. Eric Johnson is a likable LOL, except he was booed by Dallas people at St. Patrick's Day parade, and this is just because he's a fucking Democrat. And I'm not saying that he isn't likable or anything. He may be okay, but Since Eric Johnson's been in there, I've noticed some shady shit go on in Dallas too. And so I mean, you're going to sit there and like Tulsi Gabbard is a likable Democrat. You know what I'm saying? Um, but they're not gonna roll with her. And so it's not like, oh well, Bernie. It's like it's like Scott said here. I find Bernie Sanders entertaining, and actually, I think a lot of people actually do find Bernie entertaining. I find Bernie entertaining. I like watching Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz get up on a debate stage because they totally complement each other. You know what I'm saying? Think what you will about Ted Cruz. Think what you will about Bernie Sanders. Whenever they're on a stage, they have such a fucking chemistry that they're going to be engaging and it's going to be entertaining and you're gonna fucking watch it if they're on stage together. They just they feed off of each other so well. And so I meant, that's 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 just one of those things. However, the Democrats as a whole, as a party, have just killed all their credibility. And the State Department can't run with it. Let's be real. The State Department can sit here, they can look at this video right here, and they can say, oh, well, you're questioning the election results of 2020. Oh, you're sitting there saying mask mandates. Oh, you're sitting there questioning our narrative. And they can go ahead, censor me, give me a strike based on this bullshit, and then say, oh, well, we're taking it from authoritarian sources. Well, you know what? People are getting tired of your authoritarian sources. And if you want a history lesson of, what happens to authoritative sources, then just go look at Mussolini. Go look at what happened to Benito Mussolini. Go look at what happened to the motherfucker. He ended up hanging from the goddamn rafters. That's what happens whenever the authority is unpopular. And right now, the authority is unpopular. And this is, nationally. You're talking about a democracy. We're here to protect our democracy. What a fucking joke. Because if it was a democracy, you motherfuckers would be nowhere near power. So you have them passing more idiotic bullshit. And like I said, ultimately, to go ahead and correct the issue of inflation, you would cut taxes. What these idiots, these goofs on the left, like David Pakman and various other people that pretend like they have any kind of real intellect, to go ahead and try to explain to you loosely how the economy is supposed to fucking work, they have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They sit there and say, well, the government needs to spend more. The reason why the government shouldn't have anything to do with the fucking economy, to be honest with you. It should not require the government spending to keep the economy afloat at all. That is called fascism. When the government takes money out of, your pocket, my pocket, anybody who's trying to start an independent, that's what they use. They use the taxes. They say, okay, I'm going to start a business. All of a sudden, I got to fill out a 1099. All of a sudden, I got to make a fucking pay back part of the money that I earned. I've got to pay back to the government. Why? So they can go ahead and redistribute it to where are they putting it in? To other corporations. You see that they control the fucking market. And that's what fascism is. It's whenever the government controls the markets like that. The markets are, the businesses are privately owned, but the government decides, okay, this business is, Ford is going to be able to be a car manufacturer. Chevrolet is going to be able to be a car manufacturer. But Saturn, guess what? We don't like you. We're done with you. And this is, and there's no real growth. This is absolutely the opposite of capitalism. If this was a true capitalist economy, you would have a cure for fucking cancer. You would have your alternative energies. You would have more accessible healthcare, affordable healthcare. Your lives would be so much better. You'd have cheaper food, cheaper products. You'd be able to sustain yourself a little bit better. Your quality of life would go up in capitalism. Ultimately, why? Because there is, an interest in, making these services readily available. Whenever you look at communism, communism is the least efficient of any form of government, and fascism is just a little bit better than communism. It's a little bit better because at least it does have a little bit of the private market, but not enough to go ahead and to make any real um, headway. So with that being said, we now have a this inflation reduction fucking act that Biden's implementing, and of course it's a bunch of fucking horseshit, and it is gonna affect the private market. Those international business people, those ones that make over 250 billion, they're never gonna be taxed. I've already explained this shit since the fucking 2000s. I've been sitting there trying to sit there and explain this stuff. If they're an international business, if they live in international waters, if say fucking Bezos lives in fucking Switzerland, how is he gonna be here to pay his taxes? He's not. So he's not required to pay any fucking taxes. If he's not a US citizen, he's not paying United States taxes. So effectively, these taxes will never target the ones that they say that they're targeting. It's the same old fucking rhetoric that they keep on using over and over and over again. Whenever they sit there and they pass these taxes, you think, oh, yeah, well, it's going for a good cause. Your taxes are supposed to go, hypothetically, it's supposed to go for us to live in a civilized society. But according to the mainstream media, the fucking society doesn't look too civilized now, does it? You know what I'm saying? So I meant, what's this money going to? And it's going to take away more of your freedoms, and shit is give them more power, and to take away more of your income to give them more power. It doesn't make any sense. Ultimately, the income tax is a fascist tax, anyways. The sales tax should be more than enough to suffice day-to-day government operations to provide those checks and those incomes and whatnot. You really don't need an income tax. You really don't. The war spending is out of fucking control. The military industrial complex, now the media industrial complex, now the medical industrial complex, and it's just inflating, inflating the deficits. It's inflating, it's making the debt go higher, which is further causing inflation. Ultimately, taxes do just the opposite. They increase inflation, they increase debt, they increase because once if the government has that, if you had more of your income, let's say, and I think right now you, on average, I probably pay about 22%. To be honest with you, they probably take 22% out of my check, but most people pay about 12%. I think in taxes. Could you imagine what you could do with 12% more of your income? If you were making that money, you could probably invest it a little bit more. You could donate in the causes that you believe in. You can go ahead and invest it in the charities that you feel comfortable with. And, ultimately, people would be out there. Well, hell, if you don't have to worry about the income tax, you may want to go ahead and start a business, or you may want to go ahead and pursue an adventure, an invention, and create out there, put out better products and whatnot. You may want to go ahead and roll the ball and take your chances without the government saying, hey, you know what, you're allowed to make it, but, this guy isn't. Or this guy is allowed to make it, but you're not. You see what I'm saying? They stack the deck against you. And, all these people say, oh, well, this person, he took a chance. Millions of motherfuckers take chances, to be honest with you. But the sheer fact is that the government stacks the deck. We'd be a hell of a lot. We have to goat them. Ultimately, I think that what's going to end up happening, and this is what I believe that DC is probably at the end of their goddamn rope. I don't believe that there's too much that they could actually do to save not only this administration, but to save this party. Ultimately, we look at what we look at, like I said, the results. We look at probably the results back in 2016 were a disaster. And if I was to bet, and if I was to sit there and actually take, as far as like the algorithms across the internet and break them down as it pertained to the 2016 election, If Donald Trump got 62 million votes, I suspect that Hillary Clinton probably got about like 23 million votes. And this is what really probably pissed him off is that Jill Stein probably got about like 26, 27 million, and Gary Johnson was probably really, really close to Hillary Clinton. So they probably came up third and really by a narrow margin beating Gary Johnson that they were probably embarrassed in 2016. Well, instead of blaming their party, instead of blaming their politicians, instead of blaming the people that have been shoveling shit, and the people all of a sudden starting to trust the media less and less. Instead of stopping saying we need to go ahead, reform, they double down. And so, and I agree with that too. I'm totally a Ron Paul guy, and I do believe that they need to be taught a lesson. I do believe that they need to be audited. And I do believe that certain funds do need to be frozen and seized. I mean, they love freezing Canadians' funds up there for protesters, for people that are, sitting there tired of the fucking totalitarian shit. So why not? Let's just freeze their fucking shit and see exactly what the fuck is going on. Where's our money going? Is it going back into these kickbacks? What's going on? How can we make this dollar? How can we make this dollar more valuable? You know what I'm saying? Because the dollar is less valuable when the government holds it. It has less value. That's going to be that dollar is going to be worth less in the hands of the government than it is in the hands of everyday citizens. Why? Because whenever it's in the economy, people are using it for goods, services, they're trading it, they're adding value to the economy to go ahead and get the dollar, and the dollar becomes more effective. Whenever it's the government, whenever the government holds on to it, it becomes stagnant. Then the government decides, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and throw it back in these kickbacks, and it's going to end up going back into my pocket. It's just not effective. They're not doing anything to give value to that dollar, and that's it. So I think that a FOIA request. And I think ultimately what's going to end up happening is that I believe that DC ultimately understands that, well, at least the State Department, I think that they got to come to the realization that, this communist push has failed. The communist push has failed. And that ultimately this they're not going to be able to sustain. This is like Hillary Clinton in 2016. They're not going to be able to sustain this party at all. It's not going to happen. And ultimately, I think that it's dangerous. Don't get me wrong. It's still dangerous whenever the country swings this far right. But I do think that it is progressing to go extremely far right. Further right than Trump, because I don't really consider Trump that right. However, the momentum will swing just the opposite way. And basically, their own propaganda has essentially worked against them. It's almost like at this fucking point, I wouldn't be surprised that the Democrats, the people putting out this propaganda, aren't trying to get people to go ahead and just really hate the fucking left. And I get it. It's all, you look at how these people claim that they, oh, yeah, trust the science and you're a Bible thumper and you're a Bible believer. How they go out of their fucking way to try and create revelations. It's almost kind of scary. So we see the direction that society as a whole is going. And of course, this is what happens whenever you create these recessions, whenever you create these, use these agencies to create this animosity. Well, then it becomes really, really dangerous. So I think that ultimately you're going to get, you've had the charade with January the 6th. You've had them attack Trump for well over, 6 years now, and he's been out of office for 2 of it. But they've attacked Trump for 6 fucking years for the same fucking shit. Then they create the January 6th thing that has no traction whatsoever. They do the stuff with Alex Jones. They go ahead and put Alex Jones on trial. They send all these people out to do these Mar-a-Lago raids, even if it's fake, which, it could be. It could be all staged. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm pretty sure that most of it is staged. However, with that being said, um, I think that ultimately what they've come to is I think that, the Republicans win, it'll be a red wave. I don't think that, and there's not you can't have any real conflict. The left doesn't have enough support to ultimately sustain themselves. They don't have any real support to sustain themselves. So, I mean, you're not going to get a civil fucking war type scenario. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago, back in 2012, everybody was talking about these FEMA camps. These FEMA camps are still out there. There are a number of military bases out there that are not operated. So, I mean, you have internment camps to a degree. So, it's really scary, but I do think that you're going to get an impeachment of Joe Biden probably next year, and they got to rush it too. Like I said, the elections, they've got to rush that. It's not going to be like, oh, we're just going to sit here and collect ourselves. They're sworn in January, and by February, Biden's under impeachment. And I think that the media needs it as well. I believe all the State Department agencies need it. Ultimately, they've lost all their credibility. They've lost all their credibility, and you know they're getting obliterated, right, all over the internet, and that's why there's really low traffic on here. Um, there's really low traffic on Twitter. There's really low traffic on Facebook. The traffic on social medias went down. The fucking audience for the mainstream media, including Fox, is almost dead. So they're desperate. And so I think that, like I said, ultimately the mainstream media and all these other people, they're probably sitting there really needing more than us for Biden to get impeached. Everybody needs Biden to be impeached. They need him to be impeached. The Republicans need him to be impeached because the Democrats have been ultimately trying to use a bully pulpit, you know, with an administration that don't really have much, power behind it to be a bully. I mean, it's a paper tiger. And so, like, this is one of those directions that they go before people start to sit there and it's to appease everybody else is ultimately what it is. But I do think that they will go ahead and impeach Joe Biden. And the fucking stupid people in the media, they'll just sit there and say, oh, well, and you should be worried. They should be fucking worried because they're going to be the first ones that everybody's going to be like, oh, okay, you are the motherfuckers that went ahead and told us that we need this inflation reduction bullshit. You're the ones that told us that we needed to lock everything down. You're the ones that told us that we needed all this stimulus money. You're the ones that put us in this situation. So they're going to be one of those that are going to be targeted. So I think that ultimately to maybe prevent that or alleviate some form of that, ultimately they have to deliver fucking Biden up to the fucking impeachment fucking guides. So, I just kind of wanted to get a video out here and put this out there for posterity purposes. I wish I would have had some of the other fucking videos that I've had where I've made predictions and shit that were up on the internet for posterity purposes. However, YouTube decided to fucking take down my last channel because there's shit that I called way back. But this is one of those things I do believe that I thought that the Democrats may have tried to impeach Joe Biden by this month. Actually, I thought that about now they would impeach him to go ahead and because we're coming across the fiscal year, We know that it's going to be a recession. We're going to head into a recession. So I thought the Democrats may try to impeach Joe Biden to save face, but that's not what happened. They decided to go ahead and drop Roe v. Wade. They decided to go ahead and take a couple of losses just so they can come back and, virtue signal and give themselves fake positions to run on. That's ultimately was the game plan, which is stupid to me personally. I think it's kind of fucking dumb. You're not going to be able to run on wedge issues whenever you screwed up most of America, the United States, should I say, economy, their fucking infrastructure. I mean, the Democrats have screwed up so fucking much in this country that I knew that they wasn't going to be able to run on wedge issues. We're not going to make this about fucking gun control and abortion shit. People want fucking answers to the fucking crimes, and the media's not going to, the reluctant to go ahead and ask it. So the fucking Republicans are going to steamroll them. And the first thing that they're going to do in February is impeach Joe Biden. So next year is going to be the year that Joe Biden and the Democrats will be impeached. And I do believe that they're probably going to try to go ahead and target Kamala Harris too. And it won't matter. If they get Joe Biden and Kamala, then the Speaker of House, which I would prefer be Rand Paul, but it'll likely be Mitt Romney. It is what it is. They'll put somebody in there, or McConnell, and they'll impeach Biden and Harris, and then the Democrats will say that this is a lack of justice, and then ultimately, like I said, they've already got the Supreme Court, and they'll probably end up putting people, you'd have to sit there and put more people. I think that they're going to end up making DC facilitating themselves in DC with the state departments, putting in their people in the state departments. Ultimately, it's probably way past due. I would prefer them to fucking put in moderates, but they're going to put in people, their people, just kind of similar to what they did to the fucking Supreme Court. And then the fucking Democrats are going to sit there and they're going to be the ones getting censored and all this other shit. And more than likely, I'll still be censored too. They'll censor me as well, because neither side wants the truth to be out. You know what I'm saying? But with that being said, it'll be interesting from my perspective to see the left get the same kind of the left to be treated exactly how they treat everybody else. So anyways, yeah, I just wanted to make this video to have for posterity purposes. I see this trending on Twitter, and I noticed that there are a few things happening, and I just kind of wanted to go ahead and get this out there, talk about the Biden impeachment, and basically the state of the economy, and really say that the general consensus is going against the Democrats. It really is, and it's going to snowball, and it's going to keep on going, and that pendulum's going to swing radically right. So, anyways, you people tell me what you think. My battery's about to die, so I got to charge up my phone. Y'all people tell me what you think. You like, sub, do the shit YouTube tells me to do to get over. And for now, I'm out.